Captain Kim Ji-won stood on the bridge of the UES Prometheus, watching the tactical display with growing frustration. 3 years of development, countless credits invested, and Earth Command had labeled their ship a failure because it didn't fit their traditional combat models. "Captain, incoming priority transmission from Fleet Admiral Park," announced Lieutenant Lee Minji from the communications station. The holographic display materialized, showing Admiral Park Dong-yun's weathered face. "Captain Kim, the hegemony. Empire fleet has been detected at the system's edge. 200 vessels, including their flagship dreadnoughts. You are to proceed immediately to civilian stations Beta 7 through Beta 12 and coordinate evacuations." "Sir, the Prometheus could—" "Your orders are evacuation duty, Captain. Earth's real warships will handle the fighting." The transmission ended abruptly. Sergeant Choi Hyun-woo muttered from his tactical station, 3 years building the most advanced ship humanity has ever created, and they want us to play taxi driver." Kim Ji-won watched through the viewport as Earth's main battle fleet, 50 ships led by Admiral Yang Soo-jin aboard the dreadnought Incheon, accelerated toward the enemy formation. The Empire ships were massive, each one dwarfing humanity's largest vessels. "Helm, set course for the civilian stations," she ordered reluctantly, "but keep our weapon systems on standby." Admiral Kethvar of the Hegemony Empire observed the approaching human fleet from his flagship's command center. The primitive vessels moved in predictable formation, their energy signatures barely registering on his sensors compared to his mighty dreadnoughts. "Admiral, shall we deploy the full battle line?" asked his tactical officer. "Half strength will suffice. These humans need to learn their place in the galactic order." The battle began with humanity's desperate opening salvo. Admiral Yang Soo-jin's voice crackled across fleet communications. "All ships, concentrate fire on their lead vessels. Show them what Earth's children can do." The human ships fought with courage that impressed even their enemies, but courage alone couldn't overcome the vast technological gap. One by one, Earth's warships were systematically destroyed by the Empire's overwhelming firepower. Captain Kim Ji-won listened to the desperate communications from the front lines. "Admiral Yang's ship is heavily damaged," reported Lieutenant Lee Minji. "They're requesting immediate assistance." Kim stared at the evacuation ships still docking with the civilian stations. By military protocol, her duty was clear. By human instinct, the choice was obvious. "All stations, this is Captain Kim. Cancel evacuation operations. Helm, plot an intercept course for the enemy fleet, maximum burn." "Captain," Sergeant Choi protested, "that's a direct violation of—" "I know exactly what it is, Sergeant. Prepare for combat." The lone Prometheus accelerated toward the massive Empire fleet, appearing on their sensors as a single, insignificant blip approaching 200 capital ships. Admiral Kethvar barely glanced at the tactical display when his sensors officer reported the approaching human vessel. "A single ship. Perhaps they wish to surrender." "Sir, the vessel is not responding to our hail and continues on attack vector. One ship against our entire fleet? Let it come. We'll vaporize it as an example to the others." Captain Kim Ji-won's hands moved across her command console, activating systems that Earth Command had deemed too experimental for real combat. "Lieutenant Park Seo-hyun, initiate the phase variance protocol. Sergeant Nam Tae-hyung, bring the gravity drive online. Lieutenant Bae Yuna, activate the distributed intelligence network." The crew worked with practiced efficiency, despite never having used these systems in actual combat. The Prometheus had been designed by Dr. Kwon Jae-min to fight using principles no conventional military mind could comprehend. As the first Empire weapons fired, the Prometheus seemed to shimmer and phase through their energy beams. The human ship's experimental phase technology, reverse-engineered from captured alien artifacts, allowed it to exist slightly out of phase with normal space-time. "Impossible!" Admiral Kethvar roared as his weapons passed harmlessly through the human vessel. "No ship can maintain phase variance under combat conditions." The Prometheus responded by weaponizing its gravity drive, creating localized space-time, distortions that crushed 3 Empire cruisers into twisted metal. Simultaneously, what appeared to be debris and sensor buoys throughout the battlefield suddenly activated, revealing themselves as autonomous combat drones under the ship's control. "We're not fighting one ship," Kethvar realized with growing Horror. We're fighting an entire distributed intelligence network. The battle transformed from a simple military engagement into something resembling a physics experiment gone wrong. The Prometheus moved through three-dimensional space in ways that defied conventional understanding, appearing simultaneously in multiple locations as its phase technology created temporal echoes. Admiral Kethvar's reinforcements arrived to find their comrades already in full retreat. "Status report," he demanded. "Sir, we've lost 67 ships. The human vessel appears to be learning our tactics and adapting faster than our computers can track. It's not just fighting us, it's evolving." Captain Kim Ji-won coordinated the chaos from her command chair, while Dr. Oh Min-soo monitored the ship's experimental systems. "Captain, the distributed intelligence is performing beyond all theoretical parameters. It's actually improving our own technology in real time." Through the viewport, they watched as the Prometheus used captured Empire vessels as remote-controlled weapons platforms, turning the enemy's own advanced technology against them. The ship's adaptive systems had somehow integrated Empire technology into its own defensive network. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Yoon Ji-hai from Tactical, "the enemy is attempting to retreat." Kim Ji-won smiled grimly. "They don't understand. We're not just here to win this battle. We're here to ensure they never want to fight us again." The Prometheus had already seeded the Empire's escape routes with adaptive mines that would track and eliminate any fleeing vessels. What had begun as a rescue mission was becoming a complete annihilation of the most powerful fleet in the known galaxy. The last Empire dreadnought, Admiral Kethvar's flagship, limped toward the system's edge, with its engines failing and hull breached in dozens of places. The Admiral stared at his tactical display in disbelief. 200 ships reduced to one in less than 6 hours by a single human vessel. "Send a message to the Hegemony Council," he ordered weakly. Tell them never to underestimate the humans again." The Prometheus could have easily destroyed the fleeing flagship, but Captain Kim Ji-won had made her point. Sometimes the survivor who spreads the story is more valuable than another wreck. Back on Earth, Fleet Admiral Park. Dong-hyun stood in stunned silence as the after-action reports flooded in. The failed prototype had just accomplished what their entire fleet couldn't: the complete destruction of the Empire's invasion force with 0 human casualties. Dr. Kwon Jae-min, the Prometheus chief designer, was hastily recalled from his forced retirement. "Admiral, you have to understand. The ship wasn't designed just to win battles. It was designed to make the very concept of fighting humanity so terrifying that future wars become impossible." Captain Kim Ji-won's final report was brief. "The Prometheus performed as designed. Request permission to begin construction of sister ships immediately. Humanity's age of being underestimated is officially over." Throughout the galaxy, species that had dismissed humans as primitive newcomers suddenly began reconsidering their assumptions. The Hegemony Empire, which had conquered dozens of civilizations, quietly withdrew all forces from human space and issued a formal non-aggression treaty. The ignored prototype had done more than destroy a fleet. It had redefined humanity's place in the galactic community. Earth's military leadership finally understood they hadn't built a failed warship. They had built the future of interstellar warfare itself. The end. Admiral Kethvar stretched his 4 arms across the command console of his flagship Void Reaper, watching the pathetic human fleet approach through the massive viewport. His crimson eyes gleamed with amusement as he studied their primitive vessels on the holographic display. The humans had arranged their ships in a basic wall formation, something his species had abandoned centuries ago. "Look at them," he rumbled to his tactical officer, Commander Vexoth. 50 little ships thinking they can challenge the might of 200 Imperial dreadnoughts. Their largest vessel barely matches our escort frigates." The bridge crew of scaled warriors chuckled at their admiral's observation. These humans had only recently discovered faster-than-light travel, while the Hegemony Empire had been conquering star systems for over 1,000 years. The outcome was already decided. "Admiral, shall we deploy the full battle line?" Commander Vexoth asked, his clawed fingers dancing over the weapon controls. Kethvar waved a dismissive hand. Half strength will suffice. Deploy formations 7 through 14. Keep the others in reserve. These humans need to learn their place in the galactic order, but there's no need to waste ammunition. Meanwhile, aboard the human flagship Incheon, Admiral Yang Sujin gripped the command rail as her ship shuddered under the enemy's opening barrage. The Imperial weapons were unlike anything humanity had ever faced, streams of coherent plasma that could melt through their strongest armor like butter. All ships concentrate fire on their lead vessels, she commanded over the fleet communications. Show them what Earth's children can do. Target their weapon arrays and engine clusters. The human fleet responded with a coordinated volley that lit up space like a miniature sun. Railguns, missile pods, and laser batteries all fired simultaneously, creating a beautiful but deadly light show. Several Imperial ships staggered under. The assault, their shields flickering as they absorbed the punishment. For a moment, hope flickered in human hearts across the fleet. They had drawn first blood, but the Empire's response was swift and brutal. Their dreadnoughts turned their full attention to the human forces, unleashing weapon systems that could crack planets. The human destroyer Busan exploded in a brilliant fireball, taking 300 souls with it. The cruiser Daegu lost its entire port side to a plasma lance, spinning helplessly as its crew fought to maintain life support. Captain Kim Ji-won watched the slaughter unfold from the bridge of the Prometheus, her knuckles white as she gripped her command chair. Every explosion on the tactical display represented hundreds of her fellow humans, dying in the cold vacuum of space. "Captain, incoming priority message from Admiral Yang," Lieutenant Lee Minji called out, her voice tight with tension. The Admiral's image appeared on the main screen, her uniform torn and blood trickling from a cut on her forehead. Behind her, the Incheon's bridge was a chaos of sparking consoles and emergency lighting. "Any ship that can assist, we need immediate support. The Incheon has lost main engines and our weapons are down to 30%. The Gwangju and Ulsan are completely destroyed." Kim Ji-won felt her heart racing as she watched her people die. The evacuation convoy behind her was still loading civilians from the orbital stations, thousands of families, children, elderly settlers who had made these frontier worlds their home. "Admiral Yang's ship is taking heavy damage," reported Lieutenant Lee Minji. "They're requesting immediate assistance." Through the viewport, Kim could see the distant flashes of the battle. Each pulse of light meant another human ship was fighting for its life against impossible odds. The Empire wasn't just winning, they were toying with humanity like a cat with mice. The tactical display showed the grim reality. Earth's fleet was down to 37 ships and falling fast. The Empire hadn't even deployed half their forces, yet Kim stared at the evacuation ship still docking with the civilian stations. Protocol demanded she protect the non-combatants. Earth Command's orders were crystal clear. Evacuation took priority over everything else, but watching her people die while she played taxi driver felt like a betrayal of everything she had sworn to protect. "All stations, this is Captain Kim," she announced over the ship's communication system. "Cancel evacuation operations immediately. All civilian transports are to proceed to the jump point without escort. Helm, plot an intercept course for the enemy fleet. Maximum burn." The bridge fell silent except for the hum of the ship's systems. Sergeant Choi Hyun-woo turned from his station, his face pale. "Captain, that's a direct violation of Earth Command's orders. We could face court-martial for abandoning our assigned mission." Kim met his gaze steadily. "I know exactly what it is, Sergeant, but I also know what happens to those civilians if we let the Empire win here today. They won't just conquer our worlds, they'll enslave our people. Prepare for combat." The Prometheus turned away from the evacuation zone and accelerated toward the massive Empire fleet. On Imperial sensors, it appeared as nothing more than a single, insignificant blip approaching 200 capital ships, one desperate human vessel against the most powerful fleet in the known galaxy. Admiral Kethvar barely noticed the new contact on his display. One more human ship meant one more easy target. He had no idea he was about to witness something that would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. Admiral Kethvar's massive form dominated the command bridge of his flagship Void Reaper. Standing nearly 8 feet tall with thick armored skin and 4 powerful arms, he was the perfect example of hegemony superiority. His reptilian eyes scanned the tactical display, showing 50 tiny human vessels approaching his mighty fleet of 200 dreadnoughts. "Pathetic," he hissed through razor-sharp teeth. "These primitives think their metal toys can challenge the empire that has crushed 1,000 worlds." The bridge around him buzzed with activity as his crew of scaled warriors prepared for what they considered target practice. Holographic displays showed the human fleet in perfect detail. Their ships were crude compared to Imperial technology, powered by simple fusion reactors instead of the Empire's advanced dark matter engines. Commander. Vexoth, his tactical officer, leaned over the weapons console with anticipation. "Admiral, our plasma cannons could vaporize their entire fleet in minutes. Shall we deploy the full battle line?" Kethavar's laugh was a deep rumble that shook the bridge. "Half strength will suffice. We don't want to end this too quickly. These humans need to learn their place in the galactic order before they die." The Imperial fleet moved with deadly precision. Each dreadnought was a kilometer long, bristling with weapons that could crack moons. Their black hulls absorbed light, making them look like moving shadows against the stars. Energy shields shimmered around each vessel, technology so advanced that human scientists couldn't even understand how it worked. On the human flagship, Incheon, Admiral Yang Su-jin watched the approaching enemy with grim determination. She had fought pirates and rebels before, but nothing like this. Her tactical screen showed energy readings that made her ship's reactor look like a campfire next to a volcano. "All ships, this is Admiral Yang," she announced over the fleet communications. "I know these odds look impossible, but remember, we're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for every human world, every family, every child who deserves to grow up free." The bridge crew around her worked frantically at their stations. Lieutenant Park Min-ho called out targeting data, while Ensign Kim Sora coordinated the fleet's defensive formation. They were Earth's best, but even they couldn't hide their fear. "Contact in 30 seconds, reported the tactical officer. "All ships report ready for combat." Yang gripped the command rail as her ship shuddered with the power of its engines. "All ships, concentrate fire on their lead vessels. Show them what Earth's children can do." The human fleet opened fire with everything they had. Missiles streaked through space like angry hornets, followed by streams of superheated plasma from their railguns. The laser batteries added their own deadly light to the barrage, creating a spectacular display that lit up the darkness between stars. For a moment, it looked like the humans might have a chance. Several Imperial ships staggered under the assault, their shields flickering as they absorbed the punishment. The destroyer Mokpo scored a direct hit on an enemy cruiser, sending chunks of armor spinning into space. But the Empire's response was swift and merciless. Their plasma cannons fired beams of pure destruction that could melt through anything humans had ever built. The cruiser, Jeju, simply vanished in a ball of white-hot fire, taking 400 souls with it. The destroyer, Pohang, broke in half when a graviton torpedo tore through its hull like tissue paper. 20 kilometers away, Captain Kim Ji-won watched the slaughter from the bridge of the Prometheus. Her experimental ship was supposed to be evacuating civilians from the orbital stations, but she couldn't look away from the battle. Each explosion represented hundreds of her fellow humans dying in the cold vacuum of space. "Captain, priority." "Transmission from Admiral Yang," Lieutenant Lee Minji called out, her voice cracking with emotion. The Admiral's face appeared on the main screen, her uniform torn and blood running from a gash on her forehead. Behind her, the Incheon's bridge was chaos. Sparking consoles, emergency lights, and crew members struggling to keep their ship alive. "Any ship that can render assistance, we need immediate support. We've lost main engines, and weapons are down to 20%. The Gwangju and Ulsan are gone." Kim felt her heart pounding as she watched more human ships die. The tactical display showed the horrible truth. Earth's fleet was down to 34 ships and falling fast. The Empire was systematically destroying them one by one, taking their time to savor the victory. "Admiral Yang's ship is taking critical damage," reported Lieutenant Lee Minji. "They're requesting immediate assistance." Through the viewport, Kim could see the distant flashes of weapons fire. Each pulse of light meant another human ship was fighting for its life against impossible odds. The Empire wasn't just winning, they were enjoying themselves. The evacuation. Convoy behind her was still loading civilians from the orbital stations. Thousands of families, children, elderly colonists who had made these frontier worlds their home. Protocol demanded she protect them. Earth Command's orders were crystal clear, but watching her people die while she played taxi driver felt like betrayal. All stations, this is Captain Kim, she announced over the ship's communication system. Cancel evacuation operations immediately. All civilian transports proceed to jump point without escort. Helm plot intercept course for the enemy fleet. Maximum burn. Sergeant Choi Hyunwoo turned from his station, his face pale with shock. Captain, that's a direct violation of Earth Command's orders. We could face court-martial. Kim met his gaze, steadily. I know exactly what it is, Sergeant, but I also know what happens to those civilians if we let the Empire win today. Prepare for combat. The Prometheus turned toward the massive Empire fleet, appearing on their sensors as a single, insignificant blip approaching 200 capital ships. Admiral Kethvar barely noticed the new contact. One more human ship meant one more easy target. He had no idea he was about to witness something that would change everything. Admiral Kethvar was enjoying the systematic destruction of the human fleet when his sensors officer, a nervous creature with 6 eyes, interrupted his thoughts. Admiral, we have a single human vessel approaching from the evacuation zone. Kethvar barely looked up from watching another human cruiser explode in beautiful flames. A single ship? Perhaps they wished to surrender. Have they responded to our standard surrender protocols? No, sir, the vessel is not responding to our hail and continues on attack vector at maximum acceleration. The Admiral's reptilian features twisted into what passed for amusement among his species. One ship against our entire fleet of 200 dreadnoughts. This should be entertaining, let it come. We'll vaporize it as an example to show the remaining humans what happens to those who defy the Empire. Commander Vexoth leaned over his console, studying the approaching vessel's energy signature. Sir, this ship appears different from the others. Its power readings are unusual. Unusual how? Kethvar asked, though he seemed more interested in watching the main battle where his forces were picking off human ships one by one. The energy patterns don't match any known human technology. It's almost like they've combined multiple alien technologies into a single platform. Kethvar waved a dismissive claw. Impossible. These primitives barely understand their own fusion reactors. Target the ship with Battery 7 and be done with it. Meanwhile, aboard the Prometheus, Captain Kim Ji-won's hands moved across her command console like a concert pianist, activating systems that Earth Command had deemed too experimental and potentially dangerous for real combat. The bridge hummed with energy as exotic technologies came online for the first time in battle conditions. Lieutenant Park Seo-hyun, initiate the phase variance protocol, she ordered calmly, despite knowing they were about to test technology that could either save humanity or tear their ship apart at the molecular level. Park's fingers danced over crystalline controls that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. Phase variance protocol active, Captain. We're now existing 0.07 seconds out of sync with normal space-time. Sergeant Nam Tai-hyung, bring the gravity drive online. Full power to the distortion generators. Nam nodded grimly as he activated systems that bent the laws of physics. Gravity drive online, Captain. We're ready to create localized space-time distortions on your command. Lieutenant Bae Yuna, activate the distributed intelligence network. Wake up our sleeping friends scattered throughout the battlefield. Bae's console lit up like a Christmas tree as dozens of contact points suddenly appeared across the tactical display. Network active, Captain. All nodes are responding and ready for coordination. The crew worked with practiced efficiency, despite never having used these systems in actual combat. For 3 years, they had run simulations and theoretical tests, but this was the moment of truth. The Prometheus had been designed by the brilliant Dr. Kwon Jae-min to fight using principles that no conventional military mind could comprehend, a ship that didn't just break the rules of warfare, but rewrote them entirely. The First Empire. Plasma cannon fired at the approaching human vessel, a beam of superheated energy that could melt through battleship armor like butter. But something impossible happened. The beam passed right through the Prometheus as if the ship was made of smoke. "What in the seven hells?" Admiral Kethvar roared, his forearms flailing as he stared at the tactical display. Direct hit confirmed, but no damage to target. As the first Empire weapons fired, the Prometheus seemed to shimmer and phase through their energy beams like a ghost ship. The experimental phase technology, reverse-engineered from artifacts recovered from a crashed alien vessel 5 years earlier, allowed the ship to exist slightly out of phase with normal spacetime. To the Empire's weapons, it was like trying to shoot shadows. "Impossible!" Admiral Kethvar bellowed, spittle flying from his razor-sharp teeth. "No ship can maintain phase variance under combat conditions. The power requirements alone would overload any reactor." But the humans had solved that problem by not using a conventional reactor at all. Instead, they had somehow managed to harness dark matter itself, the same energy source the Empire used, but in ways that even they had never imagined. The Prometheus responded to the Empire's attack by doing something that made every alien physicist in the fleet question their understanding of reality. The ship weaponized its gravity drive, creating localized space-time distortions that reached out like invisible hands to grab 3 Empire cruisers. The effect was horrifying to watch. The massive warships, each one a kilometer long and armed, with enough firepower to level cities, simply crumpled like aluminum cans being crushed by a giant's fist. Their hulls twisted and folded in ways that shouldn't have been possible. The very atoms of their construction compressed until they formed dense spheres of twisted metal that had once been proud vessels of the Imperial Navy. But that wasn't the most shocking revelation. As the Empire fleet tried to understand what had just happened, something even more disturbing occurred. Throughout the battlefield, what had appeared to be harmless debris and standard sensor buoys suddenly came to life. Their outer shells fell, a way to reveal sleek, advanced combat drones that had been hiding in plain sight. "Sir," Commander Vexorth's voice cracked with panic. "We're detecting 47 new contacts. They were disguised as battlefield debris." Admiral Kethvar watched, in growing horror as the drones revealed themselves. Each one was only the size of a fighter craft, but they moved with perfect coordination, acting as a single distributed intelligence network controlled by the mysterious human ship. "We're not fighting one ship," Kethvar realized, his blood running cold. "We're fighting an entire distributed intelligence network that's been watching us, learning our tactics and preparing for this moment." The drones began their attack with surgical precision, targeting the Empire ship's most vulnerable points: sensor arrays, weapon hardpoints, and engine clusters. They moved like a swarm of deadly insects, too small and fast for the massive Imperial. Weapons to track effectively, Captain Kim Ji-won watched the chaos unfold with grim satisfaction. "Now they understand," she whispered. "Humanity doesn't fight fair, we fight to win." The battle had transformed into something that would be studied by military strategists for centuries, if anyone survived to tell the tale. What had started as a simple Imperial conquest was now resembling a physics experiment gone completely insane. The Prometheus moved through 3-dimensional space in ways that made seasoned pilots dizzy just watching. Admiral Kethvar gripped his command console as his flagship shuddered from another impossible attack. The human ship appeared to be in 6 different locations at once, each image slightly transparent like ghosts made of metal and energy. His tactical officer's voice cracked with panic as he tried to make sense of the readings. "Admiral, the phase. Technology is creating temporal echoes. The ship exists in multiple time streams simultaneously." "That's impossible," Kethvar roared, but even as he said it, he watched the Prometheus fire from 3 different positions at once, each shot perfectly coordinated to hit his ship's weakest points. The reinforcement fleet Admiral Kethvar had called for finally arrived at the edge of the system, 50 fresh dreadnoughts ready to join what should have been a simple mop-up operation. Instead, they found their comrades in full retreat, running from a single human vessel like prey fleeing a predator. Admiral Zarketh, commanding the reinforcements, immediately contacted Kethvar's flagship. "Brother Admiral, what is your status? Why are our forces withdrawing?" Kethvar's image appeared on the communication screen, his scales pale with shock and his forearms trembling. "Status report?" he laughed bitterly. We've lost 67 ships to one human vessel, one ship, Zarketh, and it's not just fighting us. It's learning our tactics faster than our most advanced combat computers can track them. Through the viewport of his command ship, Zarketh could see the impossible battle unfolding. The human vessel seemed to dance between Imperial ships, phasing in and out of reality, while its drone swarm moved like a living organism. Every few seconds, another Imperial dreadnought would crumple under gravitational forces or simply vanish. In a burst of exotic energy, the vessel appears to be evolving, continued Kethvar. Every tactic we try, every weapon we fire, it adapts and becomes stronger. It's like fighting our own nightmares made real. Captain Kim Ji-won coordinated the impossible chaos from her command chair, her crew working in perfect harmony, despite using technology that shouldn't exist. The bridge of the Prometheus looked more like a science laboratory than a warship's command center, with holographic displays showing equations that rewrote themselves in real time. Dr. Oh Min-soo, the ship's chief science officer, monitored banks of crystalline computers that pulsed with alien energy. Captain, the distributed intelligence network is performing beyond all our theoretical parameters. It's not just following its programming, it's actually improving our own technology while we fight. Kim watched through the main viewport as something incredible happened. 3 disabled Imperial cruisers suddenly came back to life, but instead of attacking the Prometheus, they turned their weapons on their own fleet. The ship's adaptive systems had somehow taken control of the enemy vessels and integrated them into humanity's defensive network. How is this possible? She asked, though part of her was afraid to hear the answer. The quantum processors are interfacing directly with Imperial technology, Dr. O explained, his voice filled with wonder and terror. Every ship we disable, every piece of enemy equipment we scan, becomes part of our network. We're not just winning, we're absorbing their entire technological base. Lieutenant Yoon Ji-hai looked up from her tactical station, her face pale but determined. Captain, long-range sensors are detecting the enemy attempting to organize a retreat. Should we pursue? Kim Ji-won's smile was cold as space itself. They don't understand what we really are, do they? Lieutenant, show them our message. Across the battlefield, every Imperial ship received the same transmission. Not words, but pure information downloaded directly into their computers. Technical specifications, tactical analyses, and strategic projections that painted a terrifying picture. The humans hadn't just built a warship, they had created something that could learn, adapt, and improve itself by consuming enemy technology. This isn't just about winning this battle, Kim announced to her crew. We're here to ensure they never want to fight humanity again. The Prometheus had been busy during the fight, launching thousands of tiny objects that looked like space debris, but were actually something far more sinister. As the Imperial fleet tried to retreat, they discovered that their escape routes had been seeded with adaptive mines, weapons that could track fleeing vessels, learn their defensive patterns, and adjust their attack methods accordingly. Admiral Zarketh watched in horror as his fellow commanders tried to flee the system, only to have their ships systematically hunted down by mines that seemed to anticipate every evasive maneuver. The weapons were so advanced they appeared almost alive, pursuing their targets with the persistence of predators stalking prey. By the ancient ones, he whispered, what have these humans created? The answer came as his own ship's systems began to malfunction. The Prometheus had somehow infected his computers with a virus that was rewriting his ship's programming in real time. His weapons turned offline, his engines reduced power, and his shields began to fluctuate. But the most terrifying part wasn't the technology, it was the message that appeared on every screen throughout his ship. Simple words in perfect Imperial script. This is what happens when you underestimate humanity. Tell your empire, Earth remembers. What had begun as a rescue mission to save Admiral Yang's fleet was becoming the complete annihilation of the most powerful armada in the known galaxy. The Prometheus wasn't just winning, it was demonstrating that humanity's approach to warfare was fundamentally different from anything the galaxy had ever seen. They didn't just want to win battles. They wanted to win wars before they started. The once mighty Imperial flagship, Void Reaper limped through space like a wounded animal, its hull breached in dozens of places and atmosphere venting from countless punctures. Admiral Kethvar's forearms hung limp at his sides as he stared at his tactical display in complete disbelief. 200 of the Empire's finest dreadnoughts had been reduced to burning wreckage and twisted metal in less than 6 hours, all by a single human vessel that defied every law of physics he understood. His bridge was a disaster zone. Sparking consoles cast eerie shadows across the faces of his surviving crew, while emergency lighting painted everything in hellish red. The proud warriors who had conquered 1,000 worlds now cowered at their stations, their scales pale with terror. "Admiral," his communications officer whispered, "the Prometheus is maintaining distance but not pursuing. They could destroy us easily." Kethvar knew this was true. The human ship hung in space like a metallic predator, its weapons powered down but clearly tracking his dying vessel. It was sending a message. They were being allowed to live for a reason. "Send a priority transmission to the Hegemony Council," he ordered, his voice barely above a whisper. "Tell them that everything we thought we knew about humans was wrong. Tell them to never underestimate these creatures again." He paused, watching through the cracked viewport as debris from his fleet drifted past, fragments of ships that had once been the pride of the Imperial Navy. "And tell them that if they value their lives, they will negotiate peace immediately." The Prometheus could have easily vaporized the fleeing flagship with any number of its impossible weapons, but Captain Kim Ji-won had made her point perfectly. Sometimes the survivor who spreads the story is more valuable than another piece of wreckage floating in space. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Fleet Admiral Park Dong-hyun stood in his command center, staring at incoming reports with his mouth hanging open. The walls around him displayed real-time battlefield data that seemed too incredible to believe. Officers and analysts buzzed around him, trying to process information that challenged everything they thought they knew about warfare. "Sir," his aide Lieutenant Colonel Han Woo-jin approached nervously. "We're receiving confirmation from multiple sources. The entire Imperial invasion fleet has been destroyed. 0 human casualties reported." Park felt dizzy. The failed prototype that Earth Command had written off as a waste of resources had just accomplished what their entire conventional fleet couldn't dream of achieving. A single experimental ship had faced down the most powerful military force in the known galaxy and won decisively. "Get me Dr. Kwon Jae-min immediately," he barked. "I don't care if he's in retirement. Drag him out of whatever garden he's tending and get him here now." Within hours, Dr. Kwon Jae-min stood before the gathered military leadership, looking remarkably calm for someone whose life's work had just rewritten the rules of interstellar warfare. His grey hair was disheveled, and his civilian clothes contrasted sharply with the military uniform surrounding him, but his eyes held the confident gleam of a man whose theories had been proven correct in the most dramatic way possible. "Admiral Park, you and the military command need to understand something crucial," Dr. Kwon began, pulling up holographic displays of the Prometheus design specifications. "This ship wasn't designed just to win battles. Any conventional warship can do that with enough firepower." He gestured to tactical recordings of the battle, showing the impossible maneuvers and adaptive technologies in action. The Prometheus was designed to make the very concept of fighting humanity so absolutely terrifying that future wars become impossible. Every system, every weapon, every piece of technology was chosen to create psychological warfare on a galactic scale. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. They hadn't built a warship, they had built a weapon of mass psychological destruction. Captain Kim Ji-won's after-action report was refreshingly brief compared to the chaos it had caused. The Prometheus performed exactly as designed and exceeded all operational parameters. The experimental technologies integrated flawlessly under combat conditions. Request immediate authorization to begin construction of sister ships. Humanity's age of being underestimated is officially over. But the real impact was felt throughout the galaxy itself. On a dozen different worlds, alien species that had dismissed humans as primitive newcomers suddenly found themselves reconsidering their assumptions. Emergency councils convened on planets whose names humans had never heard, all discussing the same terrifying question. If one human ship could do this, what could an entire fleet accomplish? The Hegemony Empire, which had spent centuries conquering and enslaving other civilizations, quietly began withdrawing all forces from human space. Within days, they issued a formal non-aggression treaty through diplomatic channels, along with reparations for the families of those killed in the initial attack. Other species took notice. The Crystalline Collective, masters of energy manipulation, sent ambassadors offering technology exchanges. The hive mind swarms, who had never acknowledged any other intelligence as worthy of communication, requested formal diplomatic contact. Even the mysterious Voidwalkers, ancient beings who existed partially outside normal spacetime, made their first contact with any younger species in millennia. On Earth, the military leadership finally understood what Dr. Kwon had tried to tell them 3 years earlier. They hadn't built a failed prototype that didn't fit conventional doctrine. They had built the future of interstellar warfare itself, a weapon so advanced and terrifying that it would prevent wars rather than simply win them. The ignored prototype had done far more than destroy an enemy fleet. It had redefined humanity's place in the galactic community from ignored newcomers to the species that other civilizations would think twice about challenging. As Captain Kim Ji-won looked out at the debris field that had once been the Empire's mighty armada, she smiled grimly. The galaxy had learned an important lesson today. Humans don't just fight to win battles. They fight to ensure those battles never need to be fought again. And in the cold vacuum of space, floating among the wreckage of Imperial ambition, that message was crystal clear. The end.